Hello and welcome. You're watching Eye on Africa. I'm Rochelle Ferguson-Buyahi with the main headlines on the continent for you. In South Africa, pro- and anti-government rallies take place to mark Freedom Day, which commemorates the country's first post-apartheid elections held in 1994. Following the return of rebel leader Riek Machar to South Sudan on Tuesday, his supporters say they're optimistic for the future of Africa's youngest nation. His critics, though, are unconvinced. And bidding a final farewell, a huge concert in Ivory Coast capital is to pay homage to the king of Congolese rumba, Papa Wemba. A host of musicians and singers will take to the stage. Our correspondent is in Abidjan. We begin in South Africa, where pro- and anti-government rallies have been taking place to mark Freedom Day, which commemorates the country's first post-apartheid elections held in 1994. The ruling African National Congress and opposition parties are preparing to kick off campaigning ahead of August local government polls. In Johannesburg, Cape Town and Durban, people took to the streets calling for the embattled President Jacob Zuma to step down, while in Guyana, thousands rallied in support of him. Well, in the city of Port Elizabeth, the ANC has little room for error, as this next report shows.
South Africa's ruling African National Congress has governed Port Elizabeth since the fall of apartheid, as it does nearly every major city in the country. But just 4 months before local elections, the party of Nelson Mandela has little room for error here, as the opposition Democratic Alliance targets the ANC's increasingly tarnished reputation.
We're convinced that the ANC's track record of service delivery, poor government, massive allegations of corruption, expenditure on a public transport system, 2.5 billion rand, and that doesn't work. The buses have never been on the road, are all factors that will compound the ANC's declining support.
The ANC had always enjoyed a comfortable majority here, but in the last vote 5 years ago, the DA trailed by just 11 percentage points, and South Africa's sixth largest city is now considered up for grabs. With youth unemployment running at almost 50%, the opposition are hoping to tap into the seething discontent of the city's poor.
We feel being let down by the government. The municipality officials, they do come and they promise us that they're going to relocate us, but nothing has happened until that.
Aware of the looming threat, it was here that the ruling party launched its election campaign 2 weeks ago. And although President Jacob Zuma has been dogged by corruption allegations and calls to step down, the party insists it will hold the city.
We've been interacting with our people, explaining those issues, simplifying them, breaking them down, and making our people understand the opposition is desperately looking for anything and everything that can be grabbed and used to try and fight against the ANC.
Zuma's reputation took a severe beating after millions in public funds were used to upgrade his private home. A defeat for the ANC in the province of Nelson Mandela's birth, which showed just how far the party has fallen.
In other news, police in West Africa's Cape Verde island say they've arrested a soldier suspected of shooting dead 11 people, including 8 soldiers and 3 civilians. Well, the 23-year-old was captured early this afternoon in the archipelago's capital, Praia. Cape Verde's government has ruled out an attack against the state or links to drug trafficking, saying the assault was carried out for personal reasons. Next, in South Sudan, more than 2 years after a brutal civil war erupted, rebel leader Riek Machar has returned to the capital, Juba, and been sworn in as vice president to his rival, President Salva Kiir. Well, his return signals a milestone in the country's peace process, but huge challenges lie ahead for the new unity government. Supporters say they're optimistic Machar could help heal South Sudan. His critics are sceptical, as France 24's Nicolas Germain reports.
After Riek Machar finally landed in South Sudan and was sworn in as vice president, his supporters said they were optimistic for the future of Africa's youngest nation.
In terms of the suffering of the peoples of South Sudan is going to change. Those who are in the UN camps are going to be out because, you see, our people have put their hopes in this peace.
The leadership of this country has to come together to let go what had happened, recognize the suffering of these people.
But some analysts question the show of unity between President Salva Kiir and Machar.
The animosity and the bitterness that has built up over the last 2.5 years has not really dissipated yet. It will take time before it can be smoothed out.
The 2-year conflict began after Kiir fired Machar as vice president and later accused him of trying to topple him. Thousands were killed, and finally it's back to square one with Machar being named vice president.
This system is so common in our system, in the government, that if today you lose power, you have been removed from power, you go and pick up a gun, you begin to kill innocent people. Then you will be called back to the system and being given power again.
Machar and Kiir face immense challenges. More than 2 million people have fled their homes, and fighting continues between multiple militia forces who pay no heed to either Kiir or Machar.
Away from South Sudan in Ivory Coast, a €20 million education action plan is helping to keep young people off of cocoa plantations and in the classroom. Over the past 5 years alone, 155 new state schools have been opened and thousands of classrooms renovated. It's all part of government efforts to stamp out child labour.
For these kids, this is a new way of life. Studying instead of working on the cocoa plantations. Ivory Coast is the world's top producer of cocoa, with 35% of global market share. But in a bid to improve its image and stamp out child labour, the country has implemented a €20 million education action plan. And in the past 5 years, it's opened 155 new state schools and renovated thousands of classrooms.
Since there's been a school, these children come every day. When it opened in 2013, we had many students in the first class, big kids, 10-year-olds, who hadn't been to school. They managed to catch up, and it stopped them going to the fields.
Between 300,000 and 1 million children work on Ivorian plantations, according to the International Cocoa Initiative, an umbrella group that promotes child rights. In poor, rural areas, it's a way of helping their families. But keeping children out of school also contributes to a cycle of poverty from generation to generation. And the work can be mentally and physically tough, including cutting down trees, spraying pesticides, and carrying heavy loads.
Establishing schools is an important step in eliminating child labour, because once a child's in school, he doesn't have the time to go to the fields, so he can't do that laborious work.
In many rural areas, use of child labour continues, though it now carries a potential prison sentence, with 18 people jailed between 2012 and 2014. This cocoa will soon be turned into chocolate, much of it for Western consumption. It's hoped the next generation of children in Ivory Coast will also taste a sweeter future.
Staying in Ivory Coast, a farewell concert will pay homage to Papa Wemba, the king of Congolese rumba, who died after collapsing on stage last Sunday at the urban musical festival Anumabo in Abidjan. Abunidel Yabongo and Inges Bonsense will be among singers and musicians paying tribute to the man credited with influencing artists across the continent. Well, not long after the concert, the superstar's body will be flown to his hometown, Kinshasa. Arnaud Froger reports from Abidjan.
It's an all-night concert tribute to Papa Wemba that is going to take place right here tonight at the Cultural Palace of Abidjan. Dozens of artists are expected to sing. People coming have been asked to wear white clothes, just like Papa Wemba's last shirt on Saturday night's concert. This tribute is going to last until dawn, according to the festival organizers. Then tomorrow morning, Papa Wemba's body is going to be repatriated to his homeland, to DR Congo. As you know, the death of Papa Wemba has been described as a great loss for African music by artists, by politicians, and by many people all over Africa. Papa Wemba, nicknamed the King of Rumba, will then receive a big funeral. It could take place in a stadium in Kinshasa, and it could last about 2 days.
Our correspondent in Abidjan there. You are very much up to date. More Eye on Africa in about 45 minutes' time. Do join us then.